What happens in chapters 7 and 8 of Robert Louis Stevenson's Jekyll and Hyde? Let's find out.
What's going on, Revision Squad? It's me, Liam, aka Mr. Knight, aka DystopiaJunkie, and in this video I will be continuing my summary of Robert Louis Stevenson's Jekyll and Hyde. As the video title, thumbnail and the information on screen suggests, I will be focusing on Chapter 7, Incident at the Window, and Chapter 8, The Last Night, in this video. Now if this video helps you out, please do let me know. You could give it a like, write a comment on it, share it around with anybody else who might benefit from watching it, and you could of course subscribe to my channel too if you haven't done so already. All of that positive feedback means the absolute world to me, so thank you so much in advance for it. Okay, so if Chapter 7 is called Incident at the Window, what exactly happens in it?
But before we get onto those summaries, I'd like to give a quick shout out to today's video sponsor, which is my good friends over at Connell Guides. Their short guide to Jekyll and Hyde is a phenomenal resource that covers the story's plot, genre, themes and contexts, and it is precisely the sort of thing that is going to help you get those top grades in your studies. So if you want to get your hands on this guide or even any of the 50+ other guides they've made for GCSE and A-level English literature, then head over to connellguides.com. As an exclusive offer to you, the Revision Squad, you can even enter code RS15 at checkout for 15% off your order. Thank you for checking out Connell Guides, and thank you Connell Guides for sponsoring this video.
Alright, so Chapter 7, Incident at the Window, is pretty short and relatively straightforward. It begins on a Sunday. Enfield and Utterson are on one of their customary walks. On this walk, they happen to stop by the place with the door, Jekyll's place. Enfield expresses mild embarrassment that he did not recognise this place as being the back way to Jekyll's before on his previous walk with Utterson. Now Utterson says that he is worried about Jekyll because, of course he is, and so he suggests that he and Enfield should let Jekyll know that they are nearby. I mean, that might cheer him up, right? So Utterson and Enfield spot Jekyll, who is sat sadly by one of the windows in his laboratory. Utterson calls out to him and Jekyll says that he is feeling very, very low. Utterson tries to boost Jekyll's spirits and attempts to get him outside. He spends too much time indoors, that's his problem. Despite Utterson's best efforts, Jekyll declines to join him and Enfield outside. Regardless, Jekyll and Utterson manage to have a pleasant chat. However, this chat is cut short when a sudden look of terror flashes across Jekyll's face, which prompts him to close his window. Inexplicably disturbed by what they have seen, Utterson and Enfield leave, and that is where Chapter 7 comes to an end. Chapter 8, The Last Night, opens late one evening. Paul comes to Utterson's place. He is clearly disturbed by something, but he is unable to say what has moved him so greatly. Instead, he insists that Utterson comes with him so that he can see for himself what has shocked Paul so much. Utterson agrees, and Paul takes him to Jekyll's house. Once there, Utterson finds that all of Jekyll's servants are absolutely terrified by something that has happened. Paul swiftly moves Utterson out of Jekyll's house, through his garden, and takes him to outside Jekyll's lab at the bottom of the garden. Paul warns Utterson to be silent. He must hear but not be heard, and he must not enter the room that Jekyll is in. Paul speaks to his master, claiming that Utterson has turned up to the house and has requested to see Jekyll. Jekyll replies saying that he cannot see his friend, and so Paul leaves the lab. He and Utterson exchange a couple of words, and they note that Jekyll's voice has changed significantly. Poole expresses doubt about whether the person who spoke was indeed Jekyll at all. He then tells Utterson that this speaker has been crying about medicine for the last week and has been making lots of demands, telling the servants to go to the chemists to buy him various drugs and chemicals, and then ordering them to return these things to the chemists when they are not pure enough for his needs. Utterson reads one of the notes used by this figure to make these demands. For the most part, it seems to be written by the good Dr. Jekyll, who was asking a particular chemist to provide him with a sample of a chemical of the same purity that they had previously sold to him. However, towards the end of this note, its tone changes significantly, becoming much more aggressive and demanding. So after Utterson reads that note, Poole says that he once saw the speaker they heard only moments earlier. Curiously, the speaker wore a mask that covered his face and ran away from Poole when he approached. Poole questions why Jekyll would have done that. I mean, he's worked for him for years and years and years after all. Now for Utterson, the answer is obvious. Jekyll must be sick. That would explain the change to his voice, his ostensible deformity, his anxiousness to stay away from people, his insistence on getting some medicine, and so on. Goh, what a nice, easy, simple solution. Well, apparently that's not good enough for Poole, who says that Utterson is wrong. The speaker was much shorter than Jekyll, who he believes has been murdered. The speaker, Poole says, was none other than Mr. Hyde. Hearing that his friend may have been murdered, Utterson is compelled into action. He summons Bradshaw, another of Jekyll's servants, and creates a plan. He and Poole are going to enter the cabinet by breaking into it using an axe and a fire poker they picked up earlier in the chapter. Now before they try to break down the cabinet door, they hear a strange pacing coming from the other side of it. Poole even remarks that he once heard this person, Hyde, weeping. Calling through the cabinet door, Utterson demands to see Jekyll. In response is Hyde, who begs him to not come into the cabinet. Utterson and Poole disregard Hyde's pleas. They hack down the cabinet door and break in. Now the cabinet generally appears to be in good order, apart from Hyde, who is in the middle of it, wearing Jekyll's clothes that are far too big for him, and holding a crushed vial in his hand, dead, or at least at the very extreme cusp of dying. Upon seeing Hyde's ostensibly poisoned body, Utterson remarks that he and Poole are far too late to save him, but they still might be able to find Jekyll's body and prove that he has indeed been murdered. So Utterson and Poole search the lab in its entirety, but they cannot find Jekyll's body anywhere. What they do find, though, are the key to Jekyll's back door, which has rusted over through lack of use, and the remnants of a chemical experiment. They find one other thing too, an envelope from Jekyll that is addressed to Utterson. Now this envelope contains three things: a new version of Jekyll's will, which names Utterson as the sole benefactor of his entire estate instead of Hyde, a note from Jekyll to Utterson that tells him to read the narrative that Lanyon had told Jekyll he was going to write, and last of all, a bundle of papers which makes up Jekyll's story. At this, Utterson tells Poole that he will go home to read Lanyon's and Jekyll's stories, and that he will be back within a couple of hours. And with Utterson heading home to read over Lanyon's and Jekyll's stories, that is where chapter 8 of the novella comes to an end. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you found it to be helpful and you're looking forward to seeing even more videos about Jekyll and Hyde, please do let me know. You could give this video a like, write a comment on it, share it around with anybody else who might benefit from watching it, and you could even subscribe to my channel too, if you haven't done so already. As ever, I hope that you have an awesome rest of the day. If you are studying or revising, please do remember to take frequent short breaks, because a burned out student is not a happy or successful student, which is what I think you deserve to be.
So in chapter 7, Incident at the Window, there is indeed an incident at the window. because Utterson and Enfield see something very strange but somewhat unexplainable happen to Dr. Jekyll. Now in chapter 8, The Last Night, Utterson is summoned to Jekyll's place by Poole. Once there, he finds that something very strange has happened. It seems that Dr. Jekyll has been murdered by none other than Hyde, who then also takes his own life. So if that's the last night, and if Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde are both dead, that's where the story's got to end, right? Right?